We just heard Jesus telling a story about a man who has two sons. The story begins with the younger son asking for his share of his inheritance. And we don't need to be a part of that first century Jewish culture to know that this is a deeply, deeply offensive request. It's essentially saying, "Dad, I wish you were dead." A man has two sons, and one says to his father, "I wish you were dead." What a way to begin a story. What's even weirder is that the father says yes. The son leaves with all the money, spends it all, and in his humiliation and poverty, the son decides to head home, where he hopes his dad will hire him, perhaps as a servant. But when he gets home, he isn't shunned or punished or treated like a servant. His father rushes out to welcome, to embrace him, and then throws this huge party in his honor. Normally, for an occasion such as this, a big celebration culturally at the time, a lamb would be sacrificed for a meal, enough for the whole family. This father, on the other hand, calls for a calf to be prepared, enough for the entire village. Strange. It's almost like the son's actions were so destructive, he needs to be reconciled with the entire community and not just his father. But this man has two sons. This celebration infuriates the other son. The son who didn't leave. The son who worked hard. The son who respected and loved his father. Enough is enough. He refuses to join the party, instead arguing about the injustice of it all to their father. "I am here. I have always been here. I have done absolutely everything you have ever asked me to do, and you throw a party and kill the fattened calf for him?" We can almost hear the father responding in desperation. "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But now it's time to celebrate, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost, and now he's found." And that's it. That is how the story ends. The father's words left hanging in the air. And we never learn what the older brother decides to do. We never find out. And we're left to wonder. Jesus leaves this story unresolved. We are left to live in that tension. Cards on the table, when I think too much about it, this story makes me uneasy. It makes me uncomfortable because I can't help but think about how many open invitations I might be ignoring to let go of an old story from the past. I think of the release and the freedom I would experience by letting go of the feeling of being hard done by someone from my past, and question why I'm hesitating. I think of any number of situations where I could just live into the fullness of myself if I would just let go of how something around me was mishandled and move forward, for no one else's benefit but my own. But sometimes that is so hard. And maybe I'm not the only one in this room who has felt like this. Maybe I'm not the only one who feels the older brother is just a little bit just in his anger. Maybe I'm not the only one in this room who sometimes has a hard time of letting go, a hard time forgiving, because it's like letting someone off the hook, and we might not want to do that. In his fantastic book, The Prodigal God, Timothy Keller corrects the idea that this classic parable is not only about the lostness of the younger brother. In fact, the parable concludes with the older brother outside the fellowship of his father, literally standing outside, away from the celebration. The real point of the parable is that both the older and younger brothers are lost, just in different ways. Keller says, the hearts of the two brothers were the same. Both sons resented their father's authority, and both sons sought ways of getting out from under it. They each wanted to get into a position in which they could tell the father what to do. Each one, in other words, rebelled. But one did so by being very, very bad, and the other did so by trying to be extremely good. In doing so, both were alienated from the Father's heart. Both were lost sons. Here then is Jesus' radical redefinition of what is wrong with us. Nearly everyone defines sin as breaking one or multiple of a list of rules, but Jesus shows us that a man who has violated virtually nothing on the list of what we might call moral misbehaviors can be every bit as spiritually lost as the most sinful person. Why? Because sin is not just about breaking the rules. It is about putting ourselves in the place of God as judge, just as each son sought to override the authority of the Father in his own life. Judge not, lest ye be judged, so to speak. A message that I think we can all reflect on in our own lives, and I will say no more about that today. What I want to leave us with is an adapted excerpt from a beautiful reflection by Brother Pierre Marie, considering Jesus in the role of the prodigal son. He who is born not from human stock or human desire or human will, but from God's own self, one day took for himself everything that was under his footstool, and he left with his inheritance, his title of son, and the whole ransom price. He left for a far country, the faraway land, where he became as human beings are and emptied himself completely. His own people did not accept him, and his first bed was a bed of straw. Like a root in arid ground, he grew up before us. He was despised, the lowest of people, before whom one covers their face. And very soon, he came to know exile, hostility, and loneliness. After having given away everything in a life of bounty, his worth, his peace, his light, his truth, his life, all the treasures of knowledge and wisdom and the hidden mystery kept secret for endless ages. After having lost himself among the lost children of the house of Israel, spending his time with the sick and not with the well-to-do, with the sinners and not with the just, even with sex workers to whom he had promised entrance entrance into the realm of God. After having been treated as a glutton and a drunkard, as a friend of tax collectors and sinners, as a Samaritan, a possessed, a blasphemer, after having offered everything, even his body and his blood, and after having deeply felt in himself sadness, anguish, and a troubled soul, after having gone to the bottom of despair with which he voluntarily dressed himself as being abandoned by his Father, far away from the source of living water, he cried out from the cross on which he was nailed, "I am thirsty." He was laid to rest in the dust and the shadow of death. And there, on the third day, he rose up from the depths of death to where he had descended, burdened with the sorrows of the world carried. Standing straight, he cried out, "Yes, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." And Jesus returned, that prodigal son, to his Father's house. Here, friends, I think we can paint a picture in our minds of a father sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair with sweet tea, staring into the distance, and then in the silence, seeing his son far off, looking at his son and all his children, since his son had become all in all. The father knocking over his tea as he runs open arms to embrace his child. "Quick," he calls. "Bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and let us eat and celebrate, because my children, who, as you know, were dead, have returned to life. They were lost and have been found again. My prodigal son has brought them all back." Friends, may we all find ourselves at this feast. Amen. Amen.